All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know that it's very early for some of you and very late for others. So we really appreciate you carving out the time. If you need to fall off the webinar at any time, please know that we are recording this and we will post a link to this within 24 hours to our website. Rest assured that you will get all of the learnings from our current student panel that we have joining us today. My name is Katie Radall. I manage recruiting here at MIT Sloan, and like many of, I think, you on the webinar today, including our incredible current students here as panelists, I'm joining you live from my living room. And getting quite used to Zoom, and it's become the norm as I think all of this virtual technology has become for all of us these days. Before we get started, I want to just wish you and your families continued good health, and we hope to see you on campus at MIT in the near future. Today we'll be using the chat function, and so as we proceed through the webinar and the panel, please feel free to ask any and all questions to all panelists in the chat function. I also want to thank everyone who submitted questions up front. We had such an overwhelming response to the pre-asked questions that I think we will try to focus on some of those and then turn to the chat about halfway through. And hopefully we'll get answers to all the questions that you guys have at this stage of your process. But before we start, I just want to walk through just quickly how our two-year MBA program it fits into the broader spectrum of our portfolio of programs at MIT. I imagine today that everyone who's joining us is interested in one of three programs. The two most common programs probably represented on this webinar today are highlighted here in the red box. That is our two-year MBA program, which is a more traditional program that does start in September with 4 semesters, including a summer of internship or other work that you may be interested in. Also, our LGO students, or our Leaders of Global Operations students, these students earn a master's degree of engineering in a discipline of their focus, as well as an MBA in 2 years. So quite a lot to accomplish in 2 years. You can see that this is a spectrum of programs that we have at MIT Sloan in our graduate degree portfolio. I know that there are folks joining us from the very, I'm going to guess your far left of the portfolio of our MBA deferred admissions applicants. These are folks that are either in undergraduate now or just preparing to graduate from their senior year and are thinking about applying to save a space or hold a space for them in a future MBA class. Today, we are very focused on what the MBA experience is and what the culture of MIT Sloan is from an academic and extracurricular perspective. So know that all of this will be relevant to you as well. We have 2 other early career programs at MIT Sloan. These are our Masters of Finance and our Masters of Business Analytics. These are averaging about 14 months of work experience. And as you see, we move right through the spectrum. We have our 2-year MBA and our LGO program. And then we have 2 other executive MBA degree offerings. One is the Sloan Fellows MBA program. This is a 1-year sabbatical program. And then we have a more traditional eMBA program. In both of these cases, the students average about 14 to 16 years of work experience. So quite a spectrum. And as we start to talk about electives later on, it's important to keep in mind that this is the audience that you'll have in your classes on any given day. Majority of our students, 2/3 of our students at Sloan are MBA and LGO students, but I think it's important to always highlight that it is a very diverse community in many ways, and especially in the types of degrees our students are pursuing. Some of the information you see at the bottom about certificates and ways to customize your curriculum through different tracks and joint degrees. We'll get into that and touch on a lot of that as we go through our panel today with our current students. And with that, I would love to turn it over to our panelists to introduce yourselves Let's start with Anubhav because you're just first in that upper left corner, and then we'll move sort of across and then back over and down. If you guys could just introduce yourselves one by one, the program that you're in here, what you were doing before you came to Sloan, and then we'll move on with questions.
All right, so I can begin. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Anubhav Mundra. I am a first-year MBA student. And prior to Sloan, I was working in technology in a large investment bank out in New York.
Crystal. There we go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal. Hi there. I'm Crystal. I am also a first-year MBA 2021. And prior to Sloan, I actually worked at LinkedIn doing product management and before that, sales operations and strategy. So if you have any questions about that, happy to talk about it.
Shreya.
Hi, my name is Shreya. So I'm also a first-year MBA student like Anubhav, Crystal, and Charles here. And prior to Sloan, I was working in Singapore and I was working at Google in Singapore. I worked as a trust and safety engineer for Google Pay.
Hello, so Charles here, first year MBA as well. Prior to Sloan, I was working in both France and Spain in consulting in data analytics. And here in Sloan, I'm currently pursuing the finance track. So any questions, welcome.
Great. Charles, I promise we will send some track questions your way for sure as we sort of unpack the academic experience. My first question to the panelists, if maybe Anubhav and Crystal, if you want to tackle or respond to, how did you decide that the MBA was right for you? How long have you been thinking about this? Has it always been in your path? And then next, I'll ask Charles and Shreya to talk about, what surprised you so far about Sloan. So, Crystal, if we want to start with you.
Sure. I'm just getting down the unmuting practice right now. Sure, yeah. When I was at LinkedIn, I was surrounded by a number of MBAs, brand name MBAs, and just being in their kind of circle, you realize, I realized at least, that MBAs really do provide you with a plethora of experiences and a network that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise get. I knew that I wanted to go back to tech, but I also wanted some experiences from other industries that I wouldn't be able to get if I just stayed in industry. And the other thing is, of course, I'd heard that the MBA is a fantastic time, and that's proven to be true as well. So I think all of those things that I have received through my MBA so far.
And Anubhav, how is this fitting? How has this been fitting into your plan?
So I think when I started working, it wasn't really in my plan to do an MBA, but I think about 2 or 3 years down the line, as I started thinking about doing a master's degree, I wanted to do something that would sort of be general and apply to, just help me in my career progression and also just get exposed to the business side of things more, because that's something I felt lacking in my previous role. So, I was talking to some friends and family, and the MBA sort of seemed to fit what I was looking to get out of a master's degree. So, that fit into my plans, and, it's been a great experience so far, and it's really helped me in terms of the short-term benefits, in terms of career transitions, but also sort of the long-term benefits that I hope to gain from the MBA program.
Great. Charles, what surprised you so far about your first semester and a half of being a Sloanie?
Yeah, so I would maybe comment on 2 things. The first is the diversity of the people that is here. I come from half South America, half French. So I thought that I had like a diverse background. When I arrived here, I saw people coming from all around the world that had spent like 5 years per country, their whole life, all across US as well. So that was the first thing that I find surprising. The second thing is that almost anything that we want to do here is possible, as long as we are willing enough to proceed. If we want to create a trek to go and visit the pharma companies in Europe, or go South America and investigate the financial sector there, there's always people behind us to support us, and that I think has been very surprising.
Shreya, how about you? What surprised so far?
So I have one maybe more cheesy answer, but I think definitely like the collaboration. Like I think people are very collaborative at Sloan, and I think that's something that is like a very brochure language, but I do think it's true. So I think it surprised me that it was actually in par with what was advertised. And I do feel like everyone has been super collaborative. I've been in the process of actually switching to a different industry, which is consulting, that I haven't been a part of. And I felt like all of my peers were super supportive. I felt like the structure was there for me to actually pivot into that, despite having not really worked in that industry at all. So I think that's been a huge source of surprise, but also like very in line with what was already advertised to me at the same time.
Shreya, I'd love to do a follow-up. You know, what tools and resources were available to you in that first year and our first semester and a half as a career changer?
Yeah, so as a career changer, I think what was available would be like the CDO to begin with. So you have your career development office, and I think they and touchwood, like consulting is one of the industries that's very structured through the career development office, and I think that was obviously very helpful. The second was the clubs. So there's the Management Consulting Club, and they give a lot of support, including things like having a mentor who is a second-year student who guides you through the process. Lots of peers who've already worked in the consulting industry already, who are like willing and ready to case me or tell me more about their firm experience. So I would say at every level, both institutionally, club-wise, and just like your peer network, I was very supported through the process.
I have a few more career questions, but I think we'll save them after we talk a little bit about curriculum and just how you guys have engaged with career development. And I think it feeds into alumni questions also. But I'd love to talk a little bit about the academic experience. You are all here getting an MBA, and that's what everyone online is hopefully interested in, is pursuing that classroom experience and getting some more of those tools and frameworks to be more impactful in their industry or their career path. As I'm sure many people know, MIT Sloan is very famous for their one semester core, which means of the 4 academic semesters you have, which would be fall, and spring, so 4 semesters of study, the very first semester is your core semester. Core also equals all of the required general management coursework that MIT prescribes to an MBA student. After that core semester, Sloan students have all the flexibility in the world to choose the electives that they want. You can carve out your own path. You can sort of cherry pick what's the right coursework for you based on your conversations with yourself, and also maybe mentors, career development, in terms of what you need to know before you move forward in that next step of your career. Crystal, would you talk a little bit about the core experience?
Yeah, absolutely. From an academic standpoint, I think core is really helpful because you have people coming in from so many different backgrounds. Some of them have taken 25 subjects of economics already, whereas some of them are coming in with engineering backgrounds and like barely an idea of what economics is, haven't really thought about supply and demand. And so it's really helpful to kind of just level set across your entire team. It was a little bit more academically rigorous than I had expected, I will admit, but I think that's a good thing. If you're coming out of MIT with an MIT degree, you should probably be able to, do some math. But I think the most valuable part of core for me was actually the connections you make. So core is kind of like high school, where you actually have a classroom, or I guess more like middle school, where you have a classroom of people that you are aligned with, and then you kind of go to every single subject with that same group of people. And it's great because you immediately have this super close team. Even now, while we're all kind of like at home by ourselves, we have a group chat, all 70 of us. We're just every day like texting each other, checking in, organizing different virtual events and stuff like that. So I think that's actually the most amazing part of core for me.
Anyone else on the panel want to talk about their core experience? Looks like Shreya. Looks like you might be unmuted.
Okay, yeah, sure, I can talk about it. I really liked the core semester because, and I liked the one semester core because it's just enough to sort of give you a really good set of people to begin your interactions with. I would probably categorize myself as not super extroverted, and it was really helpful for me to be able to say, like, I'm going to have a consistent experience with a set of people for a semester. So in that sense, socially, I think it's a great tool. And I also thought that, to Crystal's point, it is still academically rigorous. I wouldn't say it was like an easy semester, but I think we have this concept of a stretch zone at Sloan, and I think that the core is really cool because it's like you get to experience the same stretch zone with a lot of other people. So in that sense, I really appreciated it, but at the same time, you're given like 3/4 of your time to do what you want to do and what you came to really achieve at Sloan, which I think is very important. It was a very important criteria when I was choosing where to go for an MBA.
I think, you know, having that flexibility to create your own path, to really follow your own curiosity and your electives and and then time to carve out for extracurriculars is super important to MIT. I often go as far as saying they're very agnostic about how you spend your time, as long as you meet the minimum. You know what your strengths are that you want to keep strengthening and the blind spots that you want to fill in before moving forward in your career. It can be overwhelming to choose from what is thousands of electives across MIT Sloan as well as MIT, where students have the option to cross-register or cross-register at Harvard. I asked the panel, no one yet has had the opportunity to cross-register this year. So I'll just fill in some gaps there. All MIT Sloan students are MIT graduate students first. And that gives you access to cross-register at the institute level, maybe at the media lab, the real estate center. If you meet prerequisites for the School of Engineering or Life Sciences, you can definitely cross-register into those graduate courses. You can also cross-register at a professional school at Harvard, a total of 3 times across all of those different options. Another way that our students put a little more structure around their experience of choosing electives is through a track. And I mentioned that Charles is on, we would have him talk about his finance track. So before I hand over the mic, there are 3 tracks. One is in finance, one in entrepreneurship and innovation, and one in enterprise management. They're very common for career changers, especially if you're interested in finance and banking and maybe come from engineering or operations or marketing. They're a great way to signal to a market that you're ready for those rigorous quantitative roles in banking and finance. Charles, do you want to talk a little bit about your tracks, and then I'll finish up with certificates?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I didn't know what track to pick at the beginning. So finance track was my final decision. End of the day, I'm not going to be working in the financial industry. That being said, finance track is great for me. First thing is that it has no constraint, which means if I want to drop it, seriously, I can drop it. But on the good side, I have had the opportunity to meet a lot of people that are in the same situation than me. So as a networking type of system has been very useful, but also to connect with the industry, because these tracks, what they do is that they bring a lot of speakers in a weekly basis so that you can connect to get an easy way to get to internships, to understand what's happening in the sector, to understand what are the valuable type of skill sets that you need if you want to work in this space. So as a way of creating a network, I think it has been very, very useful for me. And I know that for many others of my friends.
Great. So I want to emphasize what Charles mentioned, that these are non-binding specialization options. The tracks and also certificates, which are a little bit of structure, not as much structure in your elective offerings as a track is, are non-binding. So if you start one, you are not committed to it through the end. A track, you do have to begin at the beginning of your time. It does take all 4 semesters. A certificate, you can be bouncing along and realize you're only 1 class away from achieving that certificate, and find that extra elective you would want to take to finalize that. Certificates come in healthcare, sustainability, and more recently, data analytics, which, as you can probably imagine, is very, very popular. And currently only students registered to a Sloan degree program can pursue their certificate in analytics because of its popularity. Before we move on from academics, I know we have a lot of questions about what is this SIP thing and what is IAP. So SIP is Sloan Intensive Period, is a unique offering that we have at MIT, or I'm sorry, at Sloan. It's unique to Sloan. And then IAP, which is Independent Activities Period, is unique to MIT. I am looking at my panelists to see who might want to talk about their SIP experience. Anubhav?
Yep, I can talk about my SIP experience because, well, I had a great time in SIP last semester. So in the fall, so SIP is like Katie was saying, it's sort of a week that you get to take different classes outside of your core. So they're sort of short special classes. So I took one, which I really enjoyed, called Leading Creative Teams. And it was about how to foster a team dynamic where you can encourage new ideas and creativity overall. We had people from, this was organized by a third-party company based out of California, and they visited Sloan to host this for us. And they also tied up with Improv Boston, which is an improv company. So they were part of our class, and it was super fun to just bounce ideas. And we started with this weird topic and ended up with these great ideas on how to use ice cream in a novel way and make it viral. So I actually took notes on that because I think they would be very useful for just leading any team discussions where you're looking for new ideas. So I had great fun. And then sort of the second half, a lot of people take trips during SIP. So I went to Puerto Rico with a bunch of other Sloanies, and we had great fun over there.
So SIP, or Sloan Intensive Period, happens 4 times. It happens every October and every March. It is a way to break up a semester. Some electives at MIT are a full semester, so a 15 or 16 week long course. Most classes are actually a half a semester and are about 7 or 8 weeks. And so these SIP weeks are the halfway point in the semester where you may have midterms before or finals. And then when you come back from the week of these unique electives and trips, you would either start new electives or continue on in your 16-week courses. I'm just going to get a show of hands if someone wants to talk a little bit about their IAP, or Independent Activities Period, experience. I'm happy to talk about it then. IAP, or Independent Activities Period, is really a MIT initiative to give all of our students really the month of January, as early mid-December through the end of January, time to step away, to focus on things that are important to them. There are requirements for all degree programs. They differ across degree programs in terms of what your IAP requirement is. There are lots of fun electives you can take around the institution. A lot of our Sloan students participate in action learning courses, which often have a travel component to what seems like always a very warm destination around the world, whether it's working with an entrepreneur in an emerging market or on a sustainability project across the river in Boston at an MNC. There's a lot of flexibility in how you choose to spend your January, or what we affectionately call IAP, depending on where you're recruiting or where you are in the recruiting process. Some of those Januaries are going to spend recruiting, and that's just the way that the career development industry functions right now with MBA students, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Yes, Shreya.
I can speak a little bit about my IAP. I thought I maybe was not the most qualified because I thought maybe other people did a much better IAP than I did, but I recruited for the very first part of IAP, kind of like Katie mentioned. So I went through my consulting interviews, and then I came back to campus a little bit late after finishing those consulting interviews, and I took a Introduction to Deep Learning class, which is very popular out on main campus. And that was a really fun week long. I think it was 4 hours a day for a whole week, and you had a deliverable, and it was really fun. It was a great class, and I had a friend who took like introduction to ice skating. So like you can do a lot of things across campus, but you can obviously also take classes within Sloan for Sloan credit. That's also, so I know there's like leadership lessons from the military. I think that's like a very popular class for fulfilling your leadership elective that is done through IAP. So it was definitely a mix and match for me between sometime recruiting, sometime traveling, 1 or 2 classes. But it was a great time because it's definitely out of what I would normally be learning at core Sloan. But it was a great experience.
I'm going to give my last question about, well, I guess we could do all 4 if we can go through it quickly. Just what, I'm going to tee it up, what your favorite faculty moment or favorite class has been in the semester and a half you had. And while you think about that, I saw a couple questions about LGO and do they take classes with the MBAs? Yes, absolutely. So our LGO students are leaders of global operations students. There's about 50 in every matriculating MBA class each year. They actually come to school in June and they start their engineering core June, July, and August. And by the time everyone matriculates to the MBA program in September, including our LGOs, they already have a semester of school underneath them or behind them. And then they join oceans and study teams, and they are right there with you in your core every step of the way. How they spend the next year and a half or so differs by student. Some of them go right out into their practical training, which is for 6 months with a partner company, and then return to spend their second year on campus taking electives across both schools. Others spend the spring semester on campus, go away in the summer and fall, but everybody's back for that final spring semester. If you have more questions about LGO, please reach out to the LGO admissions team or to our admissions team, and we're happy to walk you through that. I'm gonna go start with, in the way that everyone's queued up on my screen, I'm gonna start with Charles and go backwards. Charles, what's your favorite faculty moment or faculty or course experience so far?
Yeah, so I think my favorite class so far has been one that is called Global Economic Challenges and Opportunities for Professor Kristen Forbes. It's a class that shows how the world, from a macro point of view, economically works. And it has been particularly interesting this year because we have been following since the 1st of February how the economy and how institutions have been responding to this COVID situation. So this has been like a very tough situation all around the world and for students as well. But from a economically point of view, we're understanding how our institutions are trying to protect us. It has been a great experience.
How about Shreya?
So I'm taking a class this semester that I really like, and I think it'll answer a couple of other questions that are on here about how much do we interact with the rest of MIT. So I'm taking a class called Product Design and Development, and it's with Professor Steve Eppinger, and the class is a third RISD industrial design students, a third mechanical engineering students from MIT, and a third Sloanies. Including LGOs. And I think it's just such a great mix because what you do is then you form teams and you actually have to come up with ideas of something you want to solve in the world, form a team that comes out of the iteration process, and you're put in pretty diverse teams, and then you actually have to make something like a physical product by the end of it. So there's all sorts of things that have come out of it, like better hearing aids for babies that are born without hearing. There have been even really silly things like better ways of uncorking like a wine bottle. So it's just been such a gamut of information and experience. Like I've never made a physical product. I've obviously worked in software, but so it's been so interesting to really understand what the process is like of actually being like, I have this idea of how to make, I don't know, a spatula better, but like actually doing that all the way through with a team of people has been so amazing.
Crystal, how about you?
Yeah, I'll talk about like a favorite moment. Last semester, one of our core classes is accounting, which everyone thinks is typically very dry, but it was actually one of our favorite classes, our favorite professors. At the end of the semester, I think one of our last classes right before the final, our professor basically roasted people in the class. He had like slides prepared where he went through and, you know, pointed out interesting things. Like we had an ER doctor, and he like kind of had like most likely to, you know, be the person who will tell me that I have, you know, something. So it was actually really fun, and it showed that he got to know us, and we all had a good time. We had like snacks and stuff. So I think that just kind of shows the culture where everyone kind of gets together, very modest, very humble, make fun of each other, but have a good time.
How about you, Anubhav? Take us home.
Yeah, I'll also talk about a favorite moment. There are many, but I think the one that really, I think also shows a bit about kind of what Crystal was pointing to was during Halloween last year, our econ professor sort of started playing music in the middle of class, dressed up as Elvis and danced on the table, which was unforeseen, very unexpected. But I think it speaks to how, like, it's not, obviously you're learning a lot, but also it's a very close community and everyone's very approachable. And kind of what Crystal was saying, everyone's very humble. So I think that sort of moment shows that even the professor, you know, is willing to have fun with you. And also he used those sort of interludes as also ways to teach, but sounds, you know, difficult. But then I think in the moment, like some of the things that he would sort of explain through creative ways was actually very impactful. So not the Halloween moment specifically, but yeah, it was pretty cool. So I really enjoyed that class and that moment specifically.
I think that just highlights how accessible faculty are across Sloan and across MIT. You can always ask for just getting a coffee. We all go to the same cafeteria. You know, I see them moseying into to receptions all the time that are being hosted either by admissions or other parts of the school. So they're very much accessible and intertwined in the daily life of everyone across the school. Speaking of life, it's not all about academics. I just wanted to make sure we talked about that right away. I want to focus a little bit on your own extracurricular or your social life experience. You know, how are you engaging with clubs and whatnot? Let's start with clubs or conferences. Just a quick show of hands. Is there anyone here that would want to speak? Great, Crystal, speak to your experience in some of the clubs around Sloan.
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm involved in a couple different clubs, from Tech Club to a couple others, but the one that I spend the most time with is actually not necessarily a Sloan club, but a MIT club, which I think speaks volumes to why being a part of the MIT campus is so important as well. I'm part of an organization called MIT Driverless. It's very MIT. They make self-driving cars for Formula student competitions. So it's a super MIT thing if you think about it. And it's really cool because I get to work with students across MIT, from undergrads to grad students, and they're actually sitting there building the car with their hands. And it's a lot of fun. We actually go to Europe over the summer and race. And I think this speaks volume to the fact that we get exposure to some of the brightest minds in the world working on these really emerging technologies. So I've had a great experience just being able to do that.
I love that you got out across campus. Sometimes I think it's hard to get away from Sloan. There's about 100 clubs to choose from at Sloan, and probably just as many across the institution. I think the challenge for our students is not what am I going to do with my time, it's how am I going to say no to things and what am I not going to have time for. I see a lot of nodding of heads. Does anyone want to speak to that experience this past half a year? Let's see. Great, Anubhav.
Yeah, I can go for it. I mean, I do remember in the core semester, you often, kind of to what you're saying, you often have to say no to things. You're sort of overwhelmed by the number of events. There's often a lot of events happen during the lunch block, for example, where it's sort of lunch and learn sessions or company info sessions or club info sessions. And I know I remember last semester I had a lot of conflicts on certain days, and you know, it just, you have to make a lot of choices, which is good because I'd rather be in that situation than, you know, have nothing to do. I'm personally involved in the leadership team of the product management club over here. And more on the fun side, I'm also a member of the theater and improv club, and we've done a few activities together. So I wanted to try improv for a while, I guess, and I saw this as an opportunity to do that. So we went for a free improv class at Improv Boston. We did one on campus also. So it's been good, a good mix of sort of professional focus and also just fun things to do. I think there's something for most people out here.
I would say so too. I often forget when I hear about something, what's a Sloan initiative, an MIT initiative, and a Kendall Square, which is where the Sloan School sits. It's hard to keep track of what is what. Do any of our panelists have their SO with them here or not here with them, and would want to speak to what that experience is like being here with an SO? And for everyone on the joining us, SO is our affectionate term at MIT for significant other. That means husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, partner. Sometimes it even means kids, families. I saw some nodding of heads. Who would like to speak to that? Crystal.
Sorry, I feel like I'm taking over a little bit. I have my fiance here. So we got engaged right before I came to Sloan, actually. And the first semester, core semester, he was actually away. He was not remote. He was back in San Francisco, where I'm from. And he's recently moved here, so yay, we get to be in quarantine together. But the Sloan experience for SOs is actually pretty great. Everyone is very, very welcoming. They're allowed to come with you on these pre-functions, which are the trips that you go on before Sloan starts. All the trips are open to them, or at least the student trips are. I'm not sure about the study tours or anything like that. There's actually a club called SOS, Sloan SOs or SOs at Sloan or something like that. And there's actually a number of SOs that are more involved in Sloan activities than the actual Sloanie is. So that goes to show just there's really no differentiation between the Sloanie and the SO. If you're willing to be a part of the community, then you can be involved, you can organize conferences, you can go to all the events. I think Sloan in particular is just very good at embracing SOs.
So we talked a little bit about career development, and I want to maybe spend a few more minutes on that. Charles, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you said you went into the finance track, but have now decided that might not be the path. You might not recruit through that path. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, completely.
How are you taking advantage then of career development opportunities to make those decisions?
Yeah, sure. So I think that there has been two critical things for me here. The first is the clubs. So I'm part of the management consulting club, and this has been a great tool for me. I'm going to consulting this summer and hopefully next year. So this has been great for me in terms of getting prepared for the interviews. I did not come from a management consulting background, so this is very different for me, in particular in the US, which is also different from where I come. So this has been great. And the second thing is the career development office. When I arrived to Sloan, as I said, I was looking for maybe finance opportunities, but what the career development office offered to us was a list of coffee chats or events with different companies that allowed me to meet people from banking, technology, healthcare, consulting. I basically did all the possible coffee chats you can imagine. And that helped me make my decision, understand where I wanted to work, with the type of people that I wanted to work. And then the career development office also offered me a set of mock interviews to help me with the English, with the behavioral questions, reviewing my CV, helping me approach different companies. So this was critical for me to make my decision and go back to management consulting.
Great. Anyone else? I know, Shreya, you talked a little bit about your career development experiences. I imagine the club was very helpful. Anubhav or Crystal, do you guys have anything to add in terms of how you've engaged in the career development experience? Yes, Anubhav.
Yeah, I can go ahead with that. So I was I was recruiting for product management in the tech industry, and for me, CDO was very helpful in sort of the initial conversations on sort of tailoring my resume for the tech industry and sort of showing how my past experience could translate to product management. So I think that was a great start for me to sort of reformat my resume for that. And then after that, I've heavily relied on the tech club and the product management club for advice from second year students. They have been super helpful during the whole process with sort of understanding different companies, understanding what interview questions might be asked. Because I'm on the leadership team of the product management club, we've done a lot of things to help people prep for interviews, among other things. So for me, I think the clubs were the biggest. Clubs and second year students in general have been extremely helpful during the whole process. And I landed an internship, I think, a lot down to their help.
Does everyone have their internship settled, or can everyone? Crystal, no. So Charles, Anubhav, and Shreya, do you guys want to tell us where you're headed this summer?
Yeah, I can start off. So I'm going, hopefully, if everything goes well over the summer. Don't want to jinx it, but I'll be going to Digital McKinsey over the summer, and I'll be in London.
Great. Anubhav?
Yeah, I'll be doing a product management internship at Zillow in Seattle. Again, fingers crossed for that.
I hope so too. It's my hometown, so hopefully it's a great place. Charles?
Yeah, so I'm going to, again, hopefully to BCG in Montreal, Canada.
Great. Crystal, what are you looking at? I know these things come in, they play in different waves, so.
Right, so I'm actually looking at startups, and specifically smaller startups.
Great.
And actually when you join some, it actually give you kind of an idea. Bigger companies and consulting and iBanking all recruit basically earlier, like November,
Great.
December, that time frame. And then smaller companies tend to be a little bit later. They don't really look as far ahead. So right now I don't know, like head deep, like all the way to here in recruiting. Right after this, I'm going to go on some interviews. So I'm looking at startups, which is why I don't have anything yet.
Well, best of luck to all of you. I can't wait to have you on a panel next fall to hear about how those experiences were this coming summer. I think it's a good point to say that I want to piggyback on what Crystal mentioned, is that recruiting happens in lots of different ways throughout your MBA experience, and Sloan is certainly not, or is a part of that. If you're looking at more traditional on-campus recruiting, which I like to describe as a very well-oiled machine and maybe an industry in amongst itself, they happen in different cycles by industry, starting with finance and then consulting. MIT Sloan does engage in healthcare and some tech recruiting on campus. But as we're finding, our Sloan students are continuing to sort of disrupt the recruiting process, whether it's through the internship or first post-grad job. They're actually reporting back to us in post-graduation surveys that a majority of them are finding that first opportunity outside of traditional recruiting post-graduation. The class of 2019 that just graduated reported that about 60% of the graduates found their first job after graduation through the network, through a pathway that I think requires a little more resiliency. I would describe as like rolling up your sleeves, leaning really heavily on your peer network, the alumni network, and career development. But I think it's really fun and exciting to think about our students finding that third pathway. There's always the entrepreneurship path that's kind of like a jungle. There's lots of people to support you, but there's definitely not a road. And then there's the very clear paved highway of traditional recruiting. And then there's this new road in the beginning that in the middle that we're seeing so many more of our students pursue. And that does require really flexing that networking skill. I was just curious, has anyone spent any time with alumni either before they came to Sloan or while they've been a student? Great. Shreya, why don't you talk about your alumni experience?
So my alumni experience was strong even before coming to Sloan, because there were two Sloanies who actually worked on the product that I was working on at Google. So one was a product manager, and the other was like the product director. So like she actually had an amazing job. So she actually launched Google Pay in the Philippines, in Thailand, and in Pakistan. So Tanya Idris was my director at Google, and she was such a powerhouse. And she, I think, was a big reason I decided to apply to Sloan, because she got so much out of it, and she really talked a lot about how much she got out of it. And I think that motivated me to apply to Sloan. She was one of my recommenders. And she's gone to do some pretty amazing things. And now she runs Digital Pakistan. So like Imran Khan, the prime minister of Pakistan, like tapped on her being like, hey, we need you to run like all our digital initiatives. And so it's interesting because she talks a lot about how so much of her foundation came from Sloan in a way that I hadn't necessarily heard from other people who had also gotten MBAs. And so I think for her, it was a big launching pad. And obviously everyone's experience is really personal, but I think seeing that, and she's a great role model too. I think in some ways she talked a lot about what it means for women to get an MBA, what it means for her to navigate having kids while getting an MBA. Like she had active conversations with me prior to actually getting into Sloan. And I think that just gave me that much more confidence that it could be a place that really does that for me too.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Charles.
Yeah, so a couple of things I did with alumni here at Sloan. The first, there's like a program, I don't know the name, but we have like this platform that allow us to connect with a former Sloanee that might have lived in the university maybe 20 years ago to tell us about their career path. So as I mentioned earlier, I was a bit confused as to what could be my next move in my career. And I used that program to talk with a lot of people from Sloan that had been here to understand what had been their career path, to help me see how could be my career path depending on the decision that I take. This is one of the platforms that I use. The second one was more when I decided to apply for consultancy firms in Canada. I started reaching out to people that at some point in their life had worked there and had been in Sloan. They were no longer people from actually this consultancy, like from BCG, but they were able to connect me with people, even though we have nothing in common, just having spent some 6 months in Sloan at different times in our lives. And that was very valuable because that helped me connect to the companies that I'm now going to work for.
I think that you both really touched upon what I think is so important about our community is, there's about 24,000 Sloan alumni active around the world, and the MIT ecosystem is even greater. So I'll go back to something I mentioned earlier, was to keep in mind that not only are you becoming a member of the MIT Sloan alumni community, you're also a member of the greater MIT community at large as an alumni. And depending on where you live in the world, there are often a large enough of a population to have both an MIT alumni group as well as a Sloan alumni group, which of course our alumni are very active in, once they graduate and sort of, I like to say, go back into the real world. I'm conscious of time, and so I'm gonna give our panelists one last question to think about their answer while I just walk through a couple of key points about the application. So the last question I would love for you guys to think about is, if you could think back to a year ago, sort of sitting in the seats of everyone who's joining us today, what's a piece of advice you would give them or to yourself back a year ago, or one thing you wish you'd known before pursuing an MBA or pursuing an opportunity at MIT Sloan specifically? So hold your thoughts and I'll come back to you in a second. So just a quick reminder that we do have one round remaining in our MBA application. This is for our 2-year MBA program. That is April 9th. For anyone, I know we have some folks joining us for the MBA early admissions. That's the deferred admissions offering for college seniors. That deadline, I believe, is April 13th. And so tomorrow, for folks interested in deferred admissions, there is a webinar with my colleague Jennifer Barba to walk you through the application components for the deferred admissions process. You can see over on the left of the screen all of the components required in an MBA application to MIT. I'm not going to go into great detail about them. They're all very well detailed on our website. We also have some past recordings of webinars specific to the application process. I will point out a few things that I get the most questions about. One is the cover letter and how that differs from the other parts of your application. I would recommend that you think of this as a professional cover letter. So in terms of how you're framing it and what kind of structure you're using, it should be addressed to both the deans of admissions, Donna Levinson and Rod Garcia. And here you're going to add a little bit more color to how MIT Sloan, or what's attractive about MIT Sloan when you think about sort of taking this next step in your career path. It's not, I wouldn't recommend it as a place to rehash everything I see in your resume, but maybe it's somewhere where you want to add a little more color and a little more flair to one of those important moments highlighted on your resume. I often describe it as like the gold thread that's going to kind of tie everything in your application together. You've probably heard us say in admissions at MIT before, we're not actually asking for you to tell us what your career goals are, what your first job post-graduation is going to be. As we've heard already today, it changes. And so I don't want anyone to feel like they have to tell the admissions committee what they think we want to hear. We'd rather get to know you, understand your accomplishments, and most importantly, understand that impact that you've had already on the people around you, on your company's business, and also maybe the community that you're engaged in outside of work. So that word impact is really important to us. The organizational chart is something we added a couple of years ago. It's one of my favorite data points. It really highlights the impact for me, who you work with every day, who you influence within your own team, within your own vertical. Maybe there's a couple dotted lines across the institution or the organization. I would give you the advice to drill down on your own business unit or your own vertical. If you work at a large organization like, I'm going to say Amazon, I know who's at the top of Amazon. I don't need a 20,000 person org chart. What I would prefer is what's your team look like? And then who does your manager influence? And then who do you work with on a daily basis? I recommend PowerPoint. It's a great tool to create these. It's not my expectations in the 2-year MBA that you're managing and leading teams. We know that that's something that varies by industry and you're just starting maybe to take on that responsibility. If you're a consultant, you may want to consider the project you just rolled onto or rolled off of, depending on where you are in that project. I think that's an opportunity to upload to. Unless you've been on a project long-term, then we only really need to see that current project. It's also a great opportunity if you're an entrepreneur for me to understand what co-founder really means. Is there 2 co-founders or 10 co-founders? So again, we're just looking to measure your impact and your influence on the work being carried out by your organization. And then finally, the video. This is my most favorite part of the application. There's a lot of variations on this. So if you do a YouTube search from years past, those are old versions. I recommend you just grab your favorite mobile phone or your laptop and record as many 60-second takes as you want and upload the best or favorite take. Please do not hire a film crew. Please do not professionally edit this. It is not being shared with anyone outside of our admissions committee. It's the best way for us to measure your communication style and really to get to know your personality. Be as authentic to yourself as possible. If you are more extroverted, that's great. If you're more leaning introverted, that's great too. I hope that the person I see in the video is the same person I get to meet someday in an interview or someday here at MIT Sloan. So please be authentic. Make sure I can hear you and make sure I can see you, but otherwise be as creative as you want to be. Invitations are by invitation only. I would normally say we conduct all interviews around the world in person. At this moment, we are conducting all interviews live from our kitchens and living rooms via Skype. But we look forward to hopefully connecting with you virtually in round 3 or this summer or next cycle when our application process begins in the autumn. So I'm going to toss it back to our students. Before we log off, I just want to say thank you to all of them. I know that this is a really busy time for you as you're transitioning sort of to what the next part of your first year is going to look like virtually. But thank you for being here and joining us today. We really cannot do our jobs in admissions without all of you. I am going to start, we'll go Crystal, Charles, Anubhav, and then we'll wrap with Shreya. So Crystal, what's one piece of advice or one thing you wish you had known at this stage of the game?
Yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit already, but I want to just zoom in on this again. There's so many things you can do here. Like the everything, everywhere I look, it's like, oh, that sounds cool. Oh, that's really cool too. Like everywhere I look, there's something that's really cool that I want to get involved in. And I think it's important to recognize that you can't do everything. There's like that Venn diagram of like sleep, academics, and like personal life, and you can't really have all of them. So coming in with an idea of what you want to get out of the MBA can be really helpful to keep your head afloat and enable you to sleep, really.
Yeah, sleep's important. I think I said, did I say Charles? Yes.
Yeah, so I remember being at this very type of webinar 1 year ago. So I will go to the type of advice that I would have liked to her at that time. And if I have one advice to give, it would be like, really do your homework. If you want to go to do an MBA and you think that Sloan is a good MBA for you, really dig into that. Go and look into the website to see what are the classes, the community. Go and see in LinkedIn who has come here that has the same background than you, that has gone to the same undergrad university, or that comes from your hometown, because people usually respond to those types of emails if you contact personally someone to which you have a type of link, and that is something that can really help you know if this is a good opportunity for you, but also like to get like the tricks or the advice from people that has already been successful in the process.
Great. Anubhav.
So Crystal kind of stole my advice, but
Okay.
I'll think of something. So another thing that piece of advice or thing that I wish I'd done more of was just to talk to more people who have done MBAs or know people who've done MBAs, just to get a better sense of what they got out of the MBA experience, and that can sort of inform you what you care about when doing the MBA. So I talked a bit to people in my family, but I wish I'd sort of talked to more people who had recently done the MBA, for example. I think that just would give you a better idea of what you would be getting into, and also help you, with to Crystal's point, prioritize what you actually want to get out of the experience.
Great. Shreya.
So I guess my piece of advice is a little bit more qualitative, but I would say relax. Like, calm down. I was not relaxed at this point last year. I was like, where am I applying? What's going on? I also think I had a lot of imposter syndrome. So like my first round, I didn't apply to Sloan. I applied my second round and I was like, I don't know if I would get in. I don't know if it's the right fit for me. Who knows? Like, look at all the amazing things these other people have done. And so I think even a webinar like this, like seeing 250 other people can be intimidating, but like, calm down, shoot your shot, like write your letter, just relax, you know, like don't stress out. Or stress out in the appropriate way, but like it's something to take into account that like I think everyone you meet at Sloan will probably tell you at some point they stressed out through this process, and my recommendation is like take it one day at a time, really reflect on who you are as a person, and I think that'll come through. It'll come through because you guys probably all have great accomplishments, and just making sure you have the right stories down is really all you need to do, and then leave the rest to trust the admissions process after that.
Thank you all so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us from around the world. We really appreciate you carving out the time. Please don't be a stranger. Join us. I think we have some future chats coming up. We usually have one online chat every month. And we'll have, if you're just at the beginning of your exploring MBAs, we will have a much more robust schedule of events starting really in early June, all the way through next fall. We hope that we can welcome you to MIT Sloan soon. And to all the first years that joined us today, good luck this summer. Good luck with your virtual courses. And I look forward to seeing you back on campus. Thanks, everyone.